flashes right now. Are you guys ready to start this really cool lecture?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know anything about Dr. Tommy Jones?
Nope.
Nothing at all. That's even better. He's I realized he was lecturing today, and I said, hey, I'm lecturing right after this. So in lieu of prepping for my class that I'm teaching, I thought I couldn't miss a talk by Tommy Jones, Dr. Jones. And that's because I worked very closely with Tommy. I was his PhD supervisor here at the U of A. And it's a real honor to be able to introduce him and have him share his work, which is very impactful and very much out in the real world in Indian country and working with the federal government. We have a nice sort of bio here, which I suppose I'll read. But first of all, this is the Native Voices in STEM seminar series. It's co-sponsored by the U of A. This is for Tommy, right? You guys know all this. It's sponsored by the U of A Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership, which Tommy was a Sloan Fellow when he was here as a PhD student. And it's for our group, the Indigenous Food, Energy, and Water Security and Sovereignty, NSF, National Research Traineeship Program. So Tommy, I mean, I could say a whole bunch about Tommy in terms of his skills and his background. But one of the coolest things is he's Tommy Jones from Jones, Oklahoma.
Yes.
Yes. And he's an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And on his mother's side, he's part of the Naknek Village Council in Alaska and a native shareholder of Bristol Bay Native Corporation. And so Tommy came to the U of A holding a bachelor's degree in biology and Spanish and a master's degree in conservation biology and environmental science. And he came here to pursue his PhD in the School of Natural Resources and Environment. And he minored in the American Indian Studies program. So his primary focus was in CALS and in SNRE. He also got the certification in the administration and management of American Indian Natural Resources, which I could tell you more about if you're interested. And also a certification in Native Nation Building, which is also housed in the American Indian Studies program. And he's now working, as I said, for the federal government. He's worked for the Office of Indian Energy since 2014, first as a Sandia National Lab intern, along with Professor Len Nessifer. And he's now a federal contractor. His current work includes research regarding energy development in Indian country. And this is building on his PhD dissertation, which was on the same topic. And he oversees over 22 million in grants with tribes across the lower 48s and Alaska. And this is really cool. He previously ran for Cherokee Nation Tribal Council in 2015. And he's actively involved in the Colorado branch of the Cherokee Circle since 2016. So it's a real honor, and I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Tommy Jones.
All right. Well, thank you, Ben. I'm very happy to be able to speak to everyone. I probably will be a little low energy today. My family pet died last night, and so we're all kind of grieving over that, a little corgi. Yeah, I'm really happy to be able to talk to everyone. And I'll go over a lot of what Ben just mentioned, Dr. Columbia just mentioned with education and work. Yeah, and this photo right here actually on the front page is when I received the Centennial Achievement Award at U of A. And so they actually paid to get some nice photographs for that. And so I've been able to use those a lot. Let me minimize these photos here. So again, on my mom's side, Naknek Native Village Council, it can go by either way, is from my mom's side. So she was born in King Salmon, Alaska, and she's an original shareholder from the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And she's given my brother and myself shares, which have to be passed down like that. You're not just born with shares into the corporation. And so so that's my mom's side. And my brother actually worked for our corporation in Chicago. We have 8A contracts all over the country. And then my father's side is Cherokee Nation, Oklahoma. Since growing up in Oklahoma, I had more exposure to this side. My mother was adopted and brought down to Oklahoma, so I'm not a Haskell baby. They didn't just, I know there's a lot of intertribal babies from Haskell, but that's not my story. But we're still in contact with all of we're great with the Alaska family. But yeah, I did run for tribal council in 2015. If anyone wants to talk about any of that later on, we can. It's a very difficult thing. I believe like there's a general understanding of like, Native kids are told to go out, get an education, come back and serve your community. And a lot of people feel certain ways about that that isn't always positive. But I was born in Ada, Chickasaw Indian Hospital down there, which they've now redone that thing, and it's amazing. But then raised in Oklahoma, and like a lot of Native people, common social issues, drugs in the family, poverty, that sort of thing, and that really led to me getting a lot of scholarship money later, and having quite a good story to share with people. But I would say that I had a great support system. My mother has always been a saint, and she helped every step of the way. I remember my brother and myself telling her in high school that like, we're thinking about maybe knowing, like, we don't know if we want to go to college. And she would say, well, I know, and you are. So it was a foregone conclusion. She wanted to make sure we had a better life for our kids, and I really do think that that's happening when we do have kids. But yeah, my father, he was great too. He encouraged us to get an education and all that. So that's where I come from. Let's see, I can't. So starting out of coming out of Jones, it wasn't very difficult to make good grades at my high school. And I went to a couple different universities to check out where I wanted to go. And I ended up going to one that my mom had gone to, which is Oklahoma City University. And my mother helped with applications. Like I said, rough start. My grades weren't that great to start out, getting used to the university lifestyle, mainly going from like being poor to being around at a private university with a lot of rich kids. It was quite a culture shock to me, and it was difficult to really get my footing. But I was an athlete in college. I started out playing basketball for the university, and then during one of the off seasons, I was asked to be on the rowing team. And that was what I excelled at. I'd never been in a boat like that before. And I ended up loving it. And I think that being in that sport, actually, basketball, definitely no, but rowing, there was a push for everyone to have good study skills and to do well in school. And our men's rowing team actually had a higher GPA than the honor society, which was kind of neat. But I still wish I could row, just not happening. I did do a study abroad in Argentina too, and I definitely encourage a study abroad, even if it's in your master's program or at any time. Just try to get out of the country. I think that you gain a better perspective of the U.S. Doing so, and there's so many different things to learn out there in the world. And when I did my study abroad in Argentina, I was taking Spanish classes down there. And so it made it really easy to get a double major for my undergrad. And then after that, so I received the Gates Millennium Scholarship when I was in high school. And so I had, school paid for. And during my undergrad, I was thinking I would take a year off. I would go with a friend, and I was going to be an amateur botanist for a little while. Then I panicked because Gates Millennium only allowed you to have 1 year off between programs. And by the time I decided to go to school, it was like application deadlines had passed and all that kind of stuff. But Hawaii is pretty lax on deadlines, and they have late deadlines and things like that. And so I applied out there, and I absolutely loved being in Hawaii. I I feel like my all my research skills were really developed out there because of my master's thesis. I did field work, and then just experiencing new culture, food, surfing. That was pretty awesome. I remember people telling me like, "You better get out there early so you can get the beach out of your system." It's like I don't want to get the beach out of my system, but I started realizing how fun it was to be in school because of all the different opportunities that you could do, different travel and meeting new people and all of that. And so after I finished that program, I applied to several schools for my PhD. That was 2012 when I was applying. And at that time, there was this program called Project 1000, and you could submit all your application materials to them, and then they would apply to you could pick the schools you wanted to apply to, and they would pay for the application fees for 9 schools. And so that was a really cool program, just applying once to all these schools at the same time. But what was important to me, I got into another program in Oklahoma, and I would have been close to family, but what was important to me is when I talked to Dr. Columbi about my interests, and him and I shared so many of the same perspectives on natural resources and tribes and energy. And so I knew after talking to him once, and it was funny because my parents don't have internet at home, and so I had to go to a public library to get on, and then find out, like, then call them with a cell phone. So it was kind of, I was still I had 3 degrees at that time, but still things were how they were in Oklahoma. And Ben really made me feel comfortable coming to U of A, and I'm so happy that I ended up there. And one of the reasons why, there's so many opportunities available once you're in a PhD program, internships, scholarships, speaking engagements, all these things to help build your resume and just your abilities. And so I think that being in a PhD program, I saw more opportunities available for professional development and things of that sort while in the program. And it's obvious there's a need for more native MD, JDs, PhDs. Too many times we have people sitting behind a desk that don't know who we are, writing about us and diagnosing us and putting us under a microscope. And when it's coming from us, it's quite a bit, it hits a little bit different. And then one thing I noticed is the longer you're in school, the better you get at it, from doing homework to writing, to just every aspect of succeeding in school. Once you get more and more into the habit of it, and the longer you're doing it, it becomes easy. And so anyone who's struggling right now, the more you stick to it, it'll come easier. Like, practice makes perfect with everything. But being in school gives you the opportunity to travel as well. In 2013 or 14, I was able to represent the United States as a delegate at the World Parks Congress in Australia. I know Dr. Columbi wanted to go, but I was able to go and present my PhD research. And it was very cool after the presentation that all these indigenous people from different parts of the world were coming up and talking about similar issues that their indigenous people in their countries face that are similar to Native Americans. And so I think that it's a lot of the issues that we face, we can look to other places for ideas on how to resolve some of the issues. Like New Zealand, they have a lot of good things going for them. And in general, I think that the more college degrees that you have, the more doors become open, particularly job-wise. I just having a PhD, I get people all the time wanting to to hire me, to steal me away from where I work right now. And it's just because having a PhD, they know that you know how to do research, you know how to you know, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And so I would encourage everyone to just keep going. I think we need it. One of the big things that I like to share with people are internships, and I have done a lot of internships. I started with the Washington Internships for Native Students. I ended up doing that 3 times, working for USDA and Social Security Administration. And that program's now defunct. They don't have funding to do that anymore. But basically it was, you go work in a DC office, you take classes at American University that can go towards your degrees. And you get to see the federal process of how things are run in DC at the agency level. And that's pretty interesting when you have topics or discussions about the interaction between the federal government and tribes, and you can see how that thought process goes. The next thing I did was the Native American Political Leadership Program, and so you can still apply to this one. And I would say, normally for this program, you're sitting with a congressman or a senator or the like in a politically oriented program. But when I was young, there was times when I didn't have running water or electricity, and USDA Rural Development had some grants that a neighbor tribe of mine received, and I was able to get water and then a bunch of energy efficiency and electrical work. And so I wanted to pay it back in DC and work for that agency. And so I was able to do that and learn a lot more about the ways that they impact tribes. And then the Udall Native American Congressional Internship Program, which the application deadline for that just closed a couple days ago. I did that in 2013. I was there with Raul Grijalva, who's the congressman for Tucson. And I developed a great relationship with him. He sent me paintings for my wedding. We're just really, he's a really good guy, and all of his staff is really good. And I liked it so much that I came back to Tucson while I was in my PhD program and worked in his office for Tucson. And if you don't know a lot about him, he's really the guy in Congress on the House side that's in charge of all Native American and natural resource policy. So he's the top guy for those 2 issues. And so those are my 2 favorite issues. And so it's kind of nice to have an advocate like him out there. The Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, which is based out of NAU, Northern Arizona University, they actually, I think their application is open right now until like 3rd week in February. I did an internship through them with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency out in San Francisco, and I was in the air permits office. And that was interesting because they were dealing with the Navajo Generating Station and Four Corners Power Plant with their emissions. And so that was an exciting time to be there. Ben Shelley was the president then, and he came with this this group of the biggest native dudes I've ever seen in my life. And what's funny is I've met a couple of them since then. It's like, I was like, you look huge. Like, have I seen you before? And so it's kind of been funny to see all those big guys over time. But that was a good program. And they have different internships all over the place. Nevada, different places in California. But that's another good one to see how the federal government interacts with tribes. And then you can see how little they know. There's a big question over land status that a lot of government agencies are confused about, like jurisdictional areas in Oklahoma. Alaska has, very limited trust land. And then I've also worked for my Alaska corporation in Cape Canaveral, Florida, twice. It was cool. The last time the shuttle launched, I was there, and I was able to get a piece of a shuttle and all that. And so that was a really cool experience. And then the National Science Foundation has research experience for undergrads. And I did one of those through Duke University in Costa Rica. And so I went down there and did research as an undergrad. But these aren't, an exhaustive list of internships, but each one of them can give you a different perspective on something. And I'm now a reviewer for the Udall Native American Congressional Internship Program, and the applications that I see, it's just, reading them gives you hope for the future for Indian country, which is really nice. But I encourage everyone to do an internship because the last internship I did, Sandia National Laboratories, led to the job that I have now. And so this program isn't available anymore. But through it, I was able to meet with tribal leaders, assisted in a whole lot of different programmatic functions and research. And importantly, I was able to work on my dissertation as an output of the internship program. So I was getting paid to do my research for my PhD, which was really cool. And what came out of that was a published paper through Sandia National Labs. And then at the start, Dr. Columbi, during the internship program, we started another paper with Dr. Columbi that also went into my dissertation. And so when you're thinking about internship programs, I would look for ways that you can benefit your dissertation or thesis because it just makes life a lot easier. But I was introduced to DOE through this. So that was 2014 when that started. And I finished my PhD before I finished the internship. And so it was kind of funny there for a little while. The director was Chris Deschini, and he would introduce like, "Hello, I'm Mr. Deschini, and this is my intern, Dr. Tommy Jones," which was kind of cool. But Chris and I are still really close, and he was a great director that we had. But I finished that internship program in June, and I started work here in Colorado, which is where I'm based now, in like 2 months later. So I was pretty fried when I started out here. And so where I am now is the Office of Indian Energy. And so it's a Department of Energy office. And in general, it's to help tribes with energy costs, energy development, efficiency, education, bringing electrical power and service to tribes. And it's been around in a couple different iterations, but since 2010, it's been the Office of Indian Energy. And we work with all federally recognized tribes. There's 574 now, 358 in the lower 48, 226 Alaska Native villages. You usually hear that there's 229 Alaska Native villages, but when you go through the Federal Register, it's kind of a mess because some villages are combined to form one government. Metlakatla, which has the only trust land in Alaska, sometimes they get counted as a lower 48, and so it's kind of confusing. So if anyone can get a definitive answer to that, that would be appreciated. But we do work with village corporations and regional corporations. If there's anything in my regional corporation, which is Southwest Alaska, I don't work on it because it's a conflict of interest, because I want my tribes to succeed. But we work with everyone across the lower 48 and Alaska that wants to work with us. And the program really focuses on 3 areas: education and capacity building, technical assistance, and access to capital. And so most of my role right now is with education, capacity building, and access to capital, which I'll go into. First, when Lynn and I started working here, there were no metrics or there's no data that was outward facing that did anything that was out there at all, really. And so Lynn and I started our first week working here to create this Positioning Tribes to Thrive. It's a link on our website, and we created cards to hand out at conferences and things like that. But it was interesting because it immediately was picked up by the Obama White House to come to have that information available at the White House Tribal Nations Conference, which I was able to go to. And I got Obama to say hi to my now wife on my phone, which was really, really cool. But what's important about the numbers that come out of our office is that there is so little information out there on Indian country that's accurate or even available. And so anything that comes out of our office immediately is starting to get cited. And so we have to be really cognizant that we're putting out information that's accurate because it immediately gets used. And some examples of that happening is, so the research that we have done here, and Lynn was part of the first wave of it, and we've done it probably 5 or 6 times since he's been gone. But our data ends up being used for like NCAI, the National Congress of American Indians, for their budget requests to Congress and the president. And so I was able to meet someone who put together the energy section for NCAI and talk to him about the data and all that. And he's like, it's exciting because we haven't had this before. And so it starts getting picked up quickly. And then Congress and the White House uses our data. And particularly with the White House, it was interesting to see your data used to cut funding for your program, which was just shocking. Like I thought the data supported the program and that we should get, that we're making an impact, but it was yeah, that's just I think how budgets go. But the main point is like the work that y'all are doing in your master's and your graduate programs is probably novel and it's going to be used. So everything that we put out, you need to really think that it's going to stay out there and it could actually inform policy, which is a big deal for us. Something that I do a lot is conference support. And it's really conferences all over the country. This past week, I just got back from Portland for the Affiliated Tribes and Northwest Indians Winter Convention. And I will say this, like I generally think that Native conferences are kind of like my home game, that, it's just where I feel most comfortable. But, I had never been to this AT&I conference in the Pacific Northwest. And it was a little bit of a shock for me, even being around natives all the time. People act differently regionally, and folks up there are more reserved than in Oklahoma. Like our chiefs and our congressmen and all that stuff, they have like a Southern Baptist preacher way that they speak, so loud and screaming and all that stuff. And then up there, everyone's reserved and all that. So it's really interesting to see. And so I still feel like even though I'm going to conferences all across the country, I'm still learning about other tribes and cultures and all of that. And so it's been pretty cool to be able to go to all these different things. And then I'm really excited this Sunday, I'm flying to Florida. I'm going to stay in their guitar resort out there that I think J-Lo stayed in it for the Super Bowl and all that. And they're having an energy and sustainability conference. And so they're looking to become leaders in energy as well. But some of the stuff that shakes out from this is different blogs and whatnot that goes onto our website. The thing that I work on most right now is requests from the Indian Energy headquarters. And so some of the things that I'm doing right now is like if new bills come out that pertain to our office, or I would say there's an interest from a congressperson to include our office in a bill, then we help write that bill. And so we know best about our program. And so they reach out to us to help craft policy. And so there's 2 bills. There's one in the House and one in the Senate right now that I directly helped work on And I think that in every field that everyone will be in, you're going to be in a situation where you're the expert on something, and that you can really maximize the benefit of Indian country if you think through parts of it. But that's a big deal that I'm working on right now. And then drafting talking points for the director of the program, who's politically appointed. And then S1, S3. So at Department of Energy, S1 would be the Secretary of Energy. So that's now Dan Brouillette. It used to be Rick Perry. So the S's just represent different leaders. And so, right. So when the S1 was confirmed in the Senate, we had to develop his talking points and understanding of our program for that Senate confirmation. And then S3, that's my director's direct boss. Different kinds of public hearings and presentations. And particularly if we have to present to Senate or the House or leadership at DOE, I almost always I have a role in doing that as well. And then we get a lot of requests for data, and a lot of that's related to, like, a senator will just call the office and like, hey, how many grants do you have in Alaska right now? And then how much are they worth, and how much energy is it equating to? And so that's some of the stuff I do now. And this stuff always is like, you get like, okay, like the thing for the S1, like his talking points, it's like, we need a complete history of the program by tomorrow. And it can be pretty stressful because we had to drop everything that we're doing out here to work on those sort of things. But it's cool because national policy that impacts Indian country can get impacted in our little office that we have here. Another thing that I work on quite a bit is funding with our program. We have a lot of grants. We typically have 1 to 2 grants a year that we give out, that we have like a 50% cost share. And so tribes pay half the project, we pay the other half. It's a competitive process. But my role is in editing and creating the topic areas for funding. And so responses to what the realities are in Indian country about, we want to do, so like a lot of people want to do solar, and so making sure that we have topic areas that address that sort of thing. And then just internally here at DOE, working with different offices to make sure that this whole process runs smoothly. We're actually going through our funding opportunity that's available right now is closing tomorrow, so it's pretty chaotic around here getting everything in order. But we have different things like, and a lot of these things that I have listed here won't make a lot of sense to folks who don't work with grants. But basically getting whatever the tribe submitted across the funding finish line. And there's a whole lot of different capacities that tribes hold. Some of the richer tribes can hire experts in different aspects of a grant application, and a lot of the other smaller tribes might need to rely on a contractor or someone else to help come in. And so we really work with a wide range. I think the smallest tribe that we've worked with had like 100 tribal members, and then we've worked with bigger tribes as well. But we really go across the whole range and work with a whole bunch of different tribes. And the program has done quite a lot. It was authorized for $20 million a year for our program, which is a rounding error in the bigger scheme of things at DOE. I mean, there's some programs that spend over 50 million a day. And so we have been able to have a really big impact with the small amount of money that we get. And so we are, the DOE, I say we, but DOE has invested almost $85 million in 180 different projects. And with the cost share that tribes contribute, they're valued at over $100 million. And you can see they're all across the country. And I would say that certain tribes who do get a successful application in, they seem to come back to the office when they want to do their next project. And I think the most important part with our group is that we have a great communication and understanding of cultural practices and tribal government processes. Because when we're working with folks, you know, sometimes we need a decision made and then there's not a tribal council meeting until the next month or 2 months. They have quarterly meetings maybe, and so we have to be patient with that. In Alaska in particular, there's a lot of subsistence that occurs, wildly more subsistence up there than the lower 48. Like one example is this top right photo says, "Save the whales for dinner." And it's, that's in Barrow, which is now called, it has a new name, which I can't pronounce. But the general idea was this was just make sure you throw your trash in the trash bin instead of the ocean, because we need to protect our whales. And so just understanding these different types of things, internet issues, financial understanding from a tribe, the different applications that they have to use with Department of Energy. And we have to really be able to work with a wide range of folks to be successful in this. And I think that our program does a really good job. I'm the only Native American out here. And we have 3 total in our office. There's me, and then there's our director is Southern Ute, and then there's an assistant in DC that's Pamunkey. But other than that, it's not Native. But the folks here have been around tribal programs and people for so long that I feel very comfortable working with everyone here. I think that they're respectful and understanding, and that we've been able to do a good job for that reason. One last thing on this photo, on the bottom right is whale blubber. And so that's the meat and then the black skin of the bowhead whale. I was able to eat that up in Barrow, and I would say it tasted the way the ocean smells. I think that's the best way to describe it. You put a little salt on it, but I don't think it's something that I would eat all the time. And so generally, what DOE does in this office is help tribes achieve their energy vision. And we don't dictate to tribes what to do. We just, we have the applications, the grant applications, technical assistance that's available. They come to us with what they want to accomplish, and we just help them financially and with education capacity building. And so one great example of this happening is the Children of the Sun Solar Initiative, the Spokane tribe in Washington. There's a lot of fires out west, California, up the coast and all that. And they had a fire that happened which took out a lot of their electricity. And, you know, with planned power outages and things like that, a lot of tribes are on the West Coast are looking at things like microgrids, solar, different things like that to help offset the impacts that fire could have. And this was one that the community rallied around, and it really, I think, a lot of our grants actually help strengthen culture and sovereignty, because like I think that, you know, if you have energy sovereignty, I mean, everything else can happen from there. Economic development, you know, caring for elders, all of those things. And so it's really cool to see these kinds of things come together. There was an immediate need for energy in this community, and they were able to do something that aligned with their cultural values, which worked out really well. And it's one of the things we like to highlight. Actually, when I was up at the conference in Portland this last week, I was able to mention this a lot to break the ice with people, to say that, you know, this is the kind of stuff that we're doing. And for those of you who are interested in energy and what these tribes are doing, all of our active grantees come to a what we call a program review annually. It's usually the third week in November, and we have around 40 to 50 different presentations. And so you see a wide range of things. You see like Pechanga in California, which is a very rich tribe, doing like line extensions and things like that. And then you see like communities in Alaska who are doing energy audits on their buildings so they can begin, thinking about the next steps. And so you see the wide range of energy focus in Indian country. And I would say most of the energy projects that are small scale in Indian country are related to our program somehow. And we usually have about 200 people come to that. And I help plan this event now. And it's pretty amazing. At the end of the week, we have everyone stand up and talk and say what they thought about the week. And it's always the same, where folks are saying that this is the best relationship that they have with a federal agency that they have, and that giving this opportunity just to network with other tribes. Because I think that when one tribe has something done, the other tribes start to look at it and like, hey, we can do that. And this event really cultivates that sort of hive mind type stuff. So that's it on my work side. So as Dr. Columbia mentioned, I am up here with the Colorado Cherokee Circle. I'm on the council for that. It's an official satellite group that represents the state of Colorado for Cherokees, and it was established in 2010. And I know a lot of tribes don't have these sorts of things around the country, but for your different communities, it's such a great forum for us to get together and discuss culture, history. We have monthly gatherings where we have all different kinds of speakers. We learn basket weaving. We have a crafts group that just made moccasins. And so we may be away from Oklahoma, but we bring people up from Oklahoma to speak to us and all that. And so we really try to keep culture alive up here. And one of the big things that we do is we have a sister organization in Oklahoma that runs a community building for folks in need. And so we get together donations in a big truck. On the bottom right, we had a big truck that we delivered a whole bunch of stuff. And it's been really cool to be able to be a part of something like this. And on the bottom left, we won the national award for going above and beyond for being part of this donation stuff. But it's a good way to connect back home and stay connected while you're away. But something I'd really like to point out, once you finish your degrees, and even towards the end of your degrees, you're going to be asked to get involved with things. And even like this, like me speaking today, it can get overwhelming, particularly, when your degree's finished. I think while you're still in your degree, it's a cool thing to be asked to be a part of something. But at a certain point, there is like everyone is requesting something. And so I've had to like pick and choose how I give back, because I work for full time, and then I'm on thesis committees. I get asked to mentor quite a bit. And it just becomes overwhelming. And so I haven't mastered on how to deal with this yet. There's been some times where, like this past summer, I broke my hand and then my basement flooded. And during that time, someone was writing for me to come give a speech at some university. And it's like, I can't do that. I got too much going on. And then they write back, so you don't care about Native students. And people want stuff from you, and then they don't understand that you have a life going on too. And so I would just encourage folks to start thinking about how you're going to manage these sort of things, and really what you want to do to give back. I think that everyone should be a part of something to give back. But it does become overwhelming. And now that I have a lot of experience working on like congressional bills, and so folks outside of my office want me to help with that too. And it's all cool things, and it's all progressing Indian country, but it wears you out. and like I'll be in Tucson in a couple weeks for something else, not work related. And so just start thinking about that now. I think time management is something that, like my wife manages very well, but I don't. So it just can get tough. So I have more to this presentation, but it's specifically about scholarships. And I want to just leave that. And if anyone has questions about how to successfully apply for scholarships, you can get this presentation. I was able to get close to $900,000, I would say, over the course of my degrees. And it really makes life easier. I was able to help my parents. The only time that I took on any student loans is when I dropped down to part-time during my master's. I needed an extra year to finish my research, and a lot of scholarships you can't get when you're at 1 credit hour. And so scholarships really do change everything. And if you want advice and help on that, I do have a website called Native Opportunities. I haven't updated that in a while. I actually created that when I was in my PhD program because a lot of folks were coming to me for scholarship help and it was wearing me out. So I just created that to send people to. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am, my upbringing, college, and career. If there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. Yeah, let's questions for Tommy. I'm sure there were a lot of points that I found interesting, and I'm sure you did too. So feel free to ask Tommy some questions. We have till 3 o'clock on the hour, or are we?
Yeah, 5:03.
Okay.
So people can get to their next class. Tommy, I love that you created a website so that you didn't have to answer questions. Like,
Oh my! You know what? The most frustrating part, like, I would still have friends ask me stuff, and it's like, come on, I told you I created that thing. But yeah, it was just to, like, finishing a PhD is hard enough, and then having everyone wanting help on something, it was yeah, you need that kind of stuff.
Tommy, do you have any, are you working on anything as the Navajo generation station now is off, like alternative, are they moving to alternative energy types of things, or just the rest of the Four Corners people picking up the power demand?
Yeah, Navajo's definitely going solar, and they already have I think 20. So Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, NTUA, they do most of the electric work. They created a 27.4 megawatt, I believe, solar farm, which is already online, which from my understanding is the first power that Navajo has created and used. Most of the coal plants, that power goes off res.
Right.
And now they are working on something new that's supposed to be even bigger than that. I have heard that, so NGS powers most of the Colorado River water to come down to Tucson and Phoenix.
Right.
And I think because NGS was the one powering that with the utilities that are in place, that they get first right to put power onto those power lines, which getting a power purchase agreement is the hardest part about large scale energy development, because you can't sell it. You're not going to be able to finance anything. And so I do think that they have first right in, like, replacing that power that was used for the Colorado River. But they're moving forward. I think is Jonathan Ness still president?
yes.
Yeah, I think he's pretty big on transitioning more into sustainable energy. For me, I don't think it's too fair for me to talk about the Navajo transitional, the different things that are going on with buying coal mines and stuff in other states and all that, because I don't really know the financial parts to that. From what I've heard, it's coal is dead, but I'm not going to I'm not going to criticize tribal leadership or tribal companies for making those types of decisions. But I do think that Navajo is primed to do a whole bunch. The problem is, I think with Navajo, a lot of those, it's so big, and a lot of those open spaces are, grazing rights and those sort of things. And it becomes an issue of like, okay, so we're going to build a whole bunch of solar here, but who are we going to displace to do it? And who are we selling that energy to? And those are community decisions. And I fully understand that. And, there's a lot of people who are okay with living off the grid. And particularly the folks that live way out, away from power lines in Navajo. I don't personally see those ever getting power lines all the way out to everyone, because it's too expensive. And like small scale solar, battery, wind, those kind of things I think are more effective for a lot of those homes. And NTUA does have a lot of those small scale units that they can put in that can be removed, and you pay a flat rate monthly to use that service. But I do think that Navajo, I mean, they're leaders in so many other things. I think that now's the time I think that 15 years ago was the time to transition from coal, but there's no better time than now, and I think they are going that way.
Thank
you.
Maybe time for one.
Time for one more question. If anybody has one, anyone online, feel free to unmute yourself.
Quiet. Well, Tommy, thank you so much. It's amazing. I was thinking about the Renewable Energy Network, right? REN. I think it was was that when we first got funding way back when you started your PhD?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the precursor to a lot of this stuff here on campus.
Yeah, that grant program helped me shift the focus of my dissertation work, because I came in looking specifically at trust reform with the BIA, and I ended up, writing a whole bunch of stuff deeply criticizing the BIA, rightfully so. And their internet was cut off for like 8 years because a judge didn't believe that they could handle anything. I decided if I ever wanted to work in the federal government, I probably shouldn't just like completely bash and only do that. But I had a focus in energy, even with that, on how the trust management impacted energy. And so I decided to shift after that opportunity that Dr. Columbia and I had, and it was really cool.
Right.
And we worked on something else too later through the Udall Foundation, or Udall, one of the branches of Udall, that really helped pinpoint some of that too.
Right. Yeah, no, it's great to have you share your who you are as a Native scholar and practitioner, and I just think about those early days, and now look at you, and it's going to be really great to track your career and then catch up on a more personal level in a few weeks.
Yeah, and I would recommend to everyone, get good at networking. I mean, it is like the thing to do to get where you want to go. Just work on it. There's classes you can take. There's things that you can do, like that thing where you give speeches, and so
Toastmasters.
yeah, those kinds of things. I know I'm a little off today. I am sad, but
yeah, I'm sorry to hear about. I know how much that dog meant to your family, and
yeah, that's tough. But networking, get good at it. You need it.
All right, that's a good final thought. I think it's very, very important. So thank you, Tommy. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.